Hello, and welcome to the 31 Days of Halloween. Please come back for all 31 days because I will have content every single day. Before we get started, if you would please give this video a thumbs up, I would appreciate it. Share the videos, that would be awesome. If you'd like to be subscribed and you are not, why not? Go ahead and do that. If you'd like to be notified when my content goes live, go ahead and click that bell. And just for something extra, I will be giving away an Amazon gift card during the 31 days of Halloween, but you must leave comments below in the videos. So, let's get started. Here is a brief history of haunted houses. In 2017, the scariest haunted house in the United States is said to have been a giant walk-through attraction located in the former Georgia Antique Center in the outskirts of Atlanta. It was named Netherworld, and it featured 3D special effects, aerial performers, and of course, flesh-eating clowns. Netherworld frightened so effectively, so inescapably, that people with heart conditions were warned against even buying a ticket. This is what the haunted house is supposed to do. They exist purely to scare you. The idea behind haunted houses is not new, of course. People have entertained themselves with spooky stories for centuries, but haunted houses are different because they are inseparable from the holiday that vaulted them to cultural prominence. The tradition could not exist without Halloween. Halloween would not be the same without haunted houses. The origins of the haunted house date back to the 19th century London, when a series of illusions and attractions introduced the public to new forms of gruesome entertainment. In 1802, Marie Tussaud scandalized British audiences with an exhibition of wax sculptures of decapitated French figures, including King Louis XVI, Marie Antoinette, Marat, and Robespierre. Tussaud's likenesses were remarkably accurate, and with good reason. She created death masks of the French Revolution's many guillotined victims. When she set up a permanent London exhibition, she dubbed her grotesque collection as the Chamber of Horrors, and that name has stuck to the Wax Museum to this very day. At the turn of the 20th century, as described by Rebecca McKendry in Fangoria magazine, the closest relatives to modern haunted houses began experimenting with the macabre themes. In Paris, the Grand Guignol Theatre became notorious for its on-stage depictions of graphic dismemberment. Sounds like a good time. The theater's director, Max Mori, famously boasted that he judged each performance by the number of people who passed out from shock in the audience. In 1915, an English fairground in Liphook debuted one of the first ghost houses, an early type of commercial horror attraction. The public appetite for horror was picking up. Lisa Morton, who is the author of Trick or Treat, A History of Halloween, tells Smithsonian.com that Halloween-themed haunted houses first emerged during the Great Depression, as American parents schemed up ways to distract young tricksters, whose holiday pranks had escalated to property damage, vandalism, and harassment of strangers. They came in about the same time as Trick or Treat did, she says. Cities looked for ways to keep these nasty, rotten little kids off the streets, essentially. Those first haunted houses were very primitive. Groups of families would decorate their basements and hold house-to-house parties, which is strange because when I was a kid, my neighbors would do the same. Kids could spook themselves by traveling from basement to basement and experiencing different scary scenes. This 1937 party pamphlet that I'm going to read below, and no, I was not alive in 1937, describes how parents could also design trails of terror to spook their children. And if we can't spook our children, what's the point? The effects may seem familiar to anyone who has ever been disappointed by a bad pub crawl. Here we go. An outside entrance leads to a rendezvous with a ghost and witches in the cellar or attic. Hang old furs, strips of raw liver on the walls, where one feels his way to the dark steps. Weird moans and howls come from the dark corners. Damp sponges and hairnets hung from the ceiling to touch his face. Doorways are blockaded so that guests must crawl through a long, dark tunnel. At the end, he hears a plaintive meow and sees a black cardboard cat outlined in luminous paint. Ooh, how frightening. However, the haunted house didn't become a cultural icon until Walt Disney decided to build one. Disneyland's Haunted Mansion opened in 1969, almost 2 decades after Disney first approved the project. The attraction, which was designed in the style of the Evergreen House and the Winchester Mystery House, quickly became a success. In a single day, shortly after its debut, more than 82,000 people passed through the Haunted Mansion, which I myself have passed through quite a few times. The attraction's centerpiece is the Grand Hall, which is a 90-foot-long ballroom sequence of dancing ghouls at a birthday party. Disney brought this scene to life through an exceptionally complex series of illusions, which is known as Pepper's Ghost, which uses refracted light to project and shape ethereal images. A lot of the professional haunters will point to one thing, and that's Disneyland's Haunted Mansion. It is the start of the haunted attraction industry. What made the Haunted Mansion so successful and so influential, though, was not its similarity to haunted houses and quote-unquote dark rides, which were tawdry carnival haunted houses of the past, but its use of the startling new technologies and effects. Ghosts were no longer just sheets hanging from a tree, but were instead actually shimmering, translucent figures that moved, they spoke, and they sang. A witch wasn't just a rubber masked figure bent over a fake cauldron anymore, but a completely realistic, bodiless head floating in a crystal ball, conducting a complex seance. Within a few years, the haunted house rapidly spread across the country. The United States Junior Chamber, which is also known as the JCs, became famous for raising money through its haunted houses. The fundraising venture was so successful that it spawned its own how-to guide. In California, Knott's Berry Farm began hosting its own Halloween night attractions, which soon transformed into a multi-week slate of events. There is a documentary about the people who work at this event. I believe they're called Sliders. Anyway, if you can find it, watch it because it's fascinating. Some people have been doing it for 20 plus years. Every year, a man named Bob Burns attracted national media attention for his very detailed recreations of classic horror movies. Even evangelical Christians began making their own anti-Halloween attractions. Jerry Falwell and the Liberty University introduced one of its first hell houses in 1972. It wasn't quite the same. And so, As Hollywood began to embrace slasher movies like Halloween, A Nightmare on Elm Street, and Friday the 13th, the haunted house industry reaped the benefits. The horror boom fueled a demand for scary attractions, not to mention cross-promotional advertisements. If you went to a haunted house in the 1980s and 90s, you would have seen a lot of Freddy Krueger, Jason, or Pinhead. The haunted house industry really followed the movie industry at the time. Larry Kirshner, president of Haunted House Association. Yes, there is a Haunted House Association, a trade group for haunted house operators, tells the Smithsonian.com. Professional haunted houses first emerged as a force in the same era, quickly outspending non-profit groups like the Jaycees. Then, tragedy struck. A fire at a haunted house in New Jersey trapped and killed 8 teenagers. In the aftermath of their deaths, attractions were shut down, and politicians enacted stronger safety regulations. Volunteer organizations struggled to be able to compete against new competition under the tougher rules. Soon, many were forced out of the business. It was a watershed moment for the industry. The Jaycees got pushed out because of their haunted houses being fairly basic. It was based on the premise that people would volunteer, but when you have people opening big haunted houses with lots of advertising, that became hard to do. During the next 2 decades, the number of professional haunted houses erupted. There were approximately 2,700 of them nationwide last year. A large haunted house attraction can reportedly earn as much as, get this, $3 million during the Halloween season. And in case you don't know, for haunted house attractions at theme parks, that's already started. And the industry is worth $300 million. These days, haunted houses are no longer just about creepy characters and hyper-realistic horror. Or how about the chainsaw with the chain off of it? Hate that, not gonna lie. Instead, the industry has flocked to all sorts of new extreme frights. Zombie runs, escape games, and experiences seemingly designed basically to traumatize you. How long will these successes last? Well, can the haunted house last another half century? And if it does, what will it look like? I can only imagine that it would be on the level of some of the best horror movies as far as special effects go. Kushner doubts that the haunted house is here to stay. If I was going to guess, he'd say probably wouldn't be around. Every business will eventually fail. So we just want to last as long as we possibly can. But a Halloween without haunted houses, I don't know about that. That is an actually scary thought. Thank you for coming to my channel, and please come back every day of October for 31 days of content. If you like my videos, please give it a thumbs up. Really helps the channel, and if you want to share the videos, that's even better. If you are not subscribed, how could you not? Go ahead and please click that button. If you'd like to be notified when my content goes live, go ahead and click that bell. Thank you, and happy Halloween.